As usual, the first thing that we do before we start trying to exploit or find any vulnerabilities, we do information gathering. So we try to gather as much information as possible about the target. And web applications are no different. So we're going to start by trying to get as much information as we can about the target IP address, the domain name info, the technologies used on the website. So what programming language is used, what kind of server is installed on it, what kind of database is being used. We're going to gather information about the company, the DNS records, and we'll also see if we can find any files that are not being listed or any subdomains that are not visible to other people. Now, you can use any of the information gathering tools that we used before. For example, you can use Maltego and just insert an entity as a website and then start running actions or transformers just like we seen in the Maltego video. I'm not going to be explaining that because it's exactly the same as we did it with a normal person, so I'm going to be skipping through that. You can also use ZenMap like we did before, or even Nexpose, and test the infrastructure of the website and see what information you can gather from that. Again, I won't be going over that because we've seen it. There's no difference between a website or a normal computer. As I said, a website is just another computer. So what I'm going to be focusing on is technologies that you'll only see in websites, such as domain names, DNS records, and stuff like that, that you won't be able to use or we haven't seen before in the previous videos. So the first thing that we're going to have a look on is WHOISLOOKUP. WHOISLOOKUP is a protocol that's used to find owners of internet resources. For example, a server, an IP address, or a domain. So we're actually not hacking or doing anything. We're literally just retrieving info from a database that contains information about owners of stuff on the internet. So, for example, when you sign up for a domain name, if you wanted to register a domain name for yourself, for example, zaid.com, when I do that, I have to supply information about myself, my address, and then the name will be stored in my own name, and people can see that Zaid owns this domain name. So this is all we're going to do. If you Google WHOISLOOKUP, you'll see a lot of websites providing this service. So I'm using whos.domaintools.com, and I'm just going to put my target domain name, and I'm just going to use isecurity.org. So as you can see, very simple, and we get a lot of information about our target website. You'll see the email that you can use to contact the domain name info. Usually you'll be able to see the address of the company that has registered this domain name, but we can see that this company is using privacy on their domain, so you can't really see the address. But if they're not using privacy, you'll be able to see their address and more information about the actual company. You can see when the domain name was created. You can see the IP address of isecurity.org. So if you ping this, you should get this IP address, and I'll show you. If I do ping isecurity.org, you'll see it's the same domain name here, same IP address here, sorry. You can see the IP location. We can see the status, obviously it's active. You can also access the history, but you need to register for that. And obviously you can see the title here. And something that's very useful here, we can see that it's using Apache web server. So this is a software that can be used as a web server. And we can see that iSecurity uses this web server, and it's of version 2.2.31. So again, we can use this to find exploits. We can see that it's using Unix, the operating system of the website, of the server, and it's using the following add-ons as well. It's using ModSSL and OpenSSL. Now right here, you can find more information about the company who registered this domain. So again, iSecurity is using privacy, so you won't be able to see the address. You can see that it's saying that the target person is using privacy protection. But usually you'll be able to see phone numbers and addresses of that company. So as you can see, very simple stuff. but it's very helpful in the long run just to know what's your target, what's their IP, what services are they using. We can also here, actually I didn't show you, you can see the name servers that are being used, and we can see that they are provided by a company called Dimnov.net. Now if you go on Dimnov, you'll see that this is a hosting company. So if we go on the English version, that you'll see that this is a hosting company. And again, you can even use this hosting company and try to social engineer your way maybe into hacking into your target, into iSecurity. Today we're going to learn how to get information about the technologies used by the target website. So we're going to use a website called Netcraft, and I'm going to put my target here, and as you can see I already put it there, isecurity.org. So I'm just going to hit enter. And again, first of all, you'll see some basic information such as the website title, the description, the keywords, and when the website was created. Scrolling down, you'll see the website itself, the domain name, the IP address, just like we've seen it in the previous video, the domain registrar, so the company who registered the domain for us, for iSecurity. And you'll also see information about the organization. And here you can't see it for this example because iSecurity is using privacy protection, but usually you'll be able to see it and see more information. We can also see that it's hosted in Netherlands. We can see the name server, which is dimnov.net. And again, if you just go to dimnov.net, you'll discover that this is a website for web hosting. So we know this is a web hosting company. In worst case scenarios, we can use this or try to hack into Dimnov itself to gain access to iSecurity. Scrolling down, you'll see history of the hosting companies that iSecurity used. And we can see that the latest one is this one, and it's running on Linux with Apache. Same server that we've seen in the previous video, 2.3.31, with Unix mod SSL and all the other add-ons. Again, this is very important to find vulnerabilities and exploits on our target computer. In the security section, you'll see if the website has any spam, and you can see that it doesn't really have any spam. Scrolling down on the web trackers, it will show you the third-party resources or applications used on our target. So we can see that our target uses Google Analytics, Google CDN, and other Google services. So this could also help us to find or gain access to the target computer. The technologies is one of the most important tabs or sections in here because it shows us the technologies used on the target website. So we can see it's using Apache web server. We already know that. On the server side, we can see that the website uses PHP. So this means the website can understand and run PHP code. This is very important because in the future, if we manage to run any kind of code on our target, then we know this code should be sent as PHP code. So if we're creating payloads in Metasploit or even Vil Evasion, we should create them in PHP format, and the target website will be able to run them because it can support PHP. On the client side, we can see that the website supports JavaScript. So if you run JavaScript, or if you manage to run JavaScript code on the website, it's not going to be executed on the website. It will be executed on the users who see the website, because JavaScript is a client-side language and PHP is a server side. So if we manage to run PHP code, it will be executed on the server itself. If you manage to run JavaScript, it's going to be executed on the users or the people who visit the website. Same here with jQuery. This is just a framework for JavaScript. Scrolling down, we can see that the website uses WordPress. This is very important. So Netcraft will also show you any web applications being used on the website. So WordPress is just a web application, so you could see other examples in your case. And it's an open source web application that a lot of other websites might have. The good thing about this is you can go and find exploits or vulnerabilities within this web application. If you are lucky enough to find an existing one, then you can go ahead and exploit it on the target website. So for example, we have WordPress in our example, and I'm going to go to exploit database. And if we go on the search here, so I'm just going to type in WordPress here, and I'm going to say I'm not a robot. Then we're going to search. And as you can see, we managed to find a lot of exploits related to WordPress. Now, these are related to different versions of WordPress, so you need to make sure that you have the same version on your target. And we'll have examples to see how to use exploits like these, but it just shows you how powerful information gathering is. Again, going down, you can see that the website uses cPanel. This is another web application. It's a hosting control panel. Again, you can go on exploit database and see if you can find any vulnerabilities or exploits related to it. And you can also find other information such as that the website uses HTML5, uses CSS, and all that kind of stuff. So Netcraft is really useful. From it, we managed to know that the website runs PHP, it runs JavaScript, it uses WordPress, so we can use WordPress to hack into the website, and cPanel. And we can also, if we go up, we also managed to know the web hosting, or even we found that in the previous video, that Dimnov is the web hosting company of this website. So in worst case scenarios, we can try to hack into that web hosting and gain access to our target website. In this video, we'll see how we can get comprehensive DNS information about the target website. So just to give you a quick refresh on what DNS is. So when you type in facebook.com, a DNS server will convert that name to an IP address. Now, the process is a bit more complicated. So the DNS server contains actually a number of records, each pointing to a different domain or to a different IP, sometimes to the same IP. So, but in general, you request a domain name, it gets converted to an IP address. And depending on that, these information need to be stored somewhere. So we're going to query this DNS server and see what information we can get through it. Now we're going to use a website called raptex.com. And I'm just going to put the target website that I want to get information about. So I'm going to type isecurity.org. And I'm going to hit enter to get a report. Now, as you can see, we will get a big report. So there is a lot of information in here, but you can actually use the buttons in here to navigate to any of the sections below. So if you want to directly go to the records or to go to the SEO, all you have to do is just click in here and you'll go directly to that section. What we're going to do right now though, we'll go over all the sections one by one and see what kind of information we got. Now keep in mind the order of this information might be different, but you should have the same sections. So in the analysis, you can see we have general information about the target. So you can see that it's telling us that iSecurity has 3 name servers, 5 mail servers, and 1 IP address. We can see the name servers used by iSecurity, and DigitalOcean is the hosting company that iSecurity is using at the time of recording this lecture. So this is very, very useful because you can go to DigitalOcean right now, you'll see the hosting company, and then you can pretend to be them and communicate with iSecurity, telling them that you're signing them up for a better hosting, you're giving them something because they are a VIP customer, and ask them to log in. Obviously, they'll be logging in to a fake login page, and that way you'll steal their information. You can tell them that there is a policy change that they have to accept, and again, ask them to log in and steal the information that way. Obviously, you'll do this through a fake login page, and this is mostly social engineering, so it's nothing to do with website hacking, and I cover all this in my social engineering course. But It's very useful because if you couldn't hack into the website through the applications installed, then the only way to get in is using social engineering. Now, below this, we can see that the target is using Google Mail servers, so they're not handling their own emails, they're using Google to handle their emails. Again, you can communicate with the target pretending to be Google and get them to do something or to log into a fake page and steal information that way. You can also see the IP address of this website, which can be used to discover other websites installed on the same server. And this is very, very useful because if you couldn't hack into your target website through the applications installed on that website, then you can try to hack into any website installed on the same server. And if you manage to do that, then you can actually navigate to your target website because they're all essentially installed on the same computer. And we'll talk more about that in the next lecture. And below right here, we have a number of similar domains to our target. Now, these might be completely irrelevant, but you can have a look and see what you have. Navigating to the quick info, again, you can see the domain name, you can see the TLD, we have the IP address, the name servers. Again, like I said, they're useful because they usually give us information about the domain hosting company or the hosting company hosting the website itself. And we also have the mail servers like we've seen before, it's Google Mail, so that all can be really, really useful. The reverse section will perform reverse DNS lookup. So as I said at the start of the lecture, DNS is used to translate domain names into IP addresses. In a reverse lookup, we use the IP address to see which domains link to this IP address. And like I said previously, this can be very, very useful because we'll be able to discover other websites hosted on the same server, and we can hack into any of these websites and from there gain access to our target. But with the reverse lookup, you won't always get all the websites installed on the same server. Therefore, in the next lecture, I will show you a better way of doing that. But if you really want to see the results of the reverse lookup, you'll have to log in. So I'm actually going to open a new tab. I'm going to go to Roptex again, and I'm going to click on login right here. And the only way to log into Roptex right now is through Google. So I'm going to click on Google. I'm going to click my email. And that's it, we're logged in. So I'm going to close this and we're going to refresh in here. And if we scroll down again to the reverse right here, we have the results of the reverse lookup, and you can either download this as a CSV or view it as a HTML. So I'm going to choose to view it as a HTML in a new tab. And right here, as you can see, we only have Z-Security on its own because Z-Security is hosted on its own server. So there are no other websites installed on the same server. But like I said, if there are other websites hosted on the same server, then you'll be able to see them in here in the reverse lookup. Now, going down, we can see a more detailed breakdown of the DNS records. So you can see here we have information about the A record, and this is the record that's used to translate the domain name into an IP address. So you can see that isecurity.org links to this IP address, which is the IP address of the server hosting or containing the files of the website. Scrolling down, we have more SEO information, search engine optimization info. We have the web trust reputation of this website. We have the Alexa ranking. In the share tab, we have the IP of the target website. Again, like I said, we can use this to get websites installed on the same server. We have a graph representation of all the information we gathered. We also have a history section. This is actually very, very useful because you can use this to track all the changes to the DNS info of the target website. So you can see when they started using Google, you can see when they started using DigitalOcean as their hosting provider. So if we scroll down, we might actually be able to see that they were using a different provider. And here you go. We can see that they were using a different hosting company. This one right here, Demo5. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But right now, as we can see, they changed and they switched to a different hosting company, DigitalOcean. So again, you can even contact them pretending to be this company and tell them that you're gonna sign them up for a better offer, or pretend that they violated one of your terms and conditions and ask them to log in to do something. When they log in, you can serve them a fake file, a backdoor, or again, use the login information, get them to log in through a fake web page and steal the username and password. So information is always very, very useful when it comes to hacking, especially if you want to perform a social engineering attack, which might be your last resort if you could not hack into the website using the applications installed on it. Scrolling down, we can see we have the WHOIS information. We had a full lecture on how to get this and how this can be useful. And finally, we have the DNS block information, which basically is a list of websites known to send spam. So usually emails sent from these websites would be blocked or considered as spam. So as you can see, a very useful website that can be used to get information about the server used to host the target website and its relationship with other websites, other servers, which hosting companies are being used. And like I said, all of this can be very, very useful, whether you want to target the website itself, whether you want to target other websites so you can hack into your target website, and even if you want to social engineer one of the admins to gain access to your target website.
In this lecture, I'd like to highlight a very important note when it comes to website penetration testing. Websites are installed on web servers on normal computers, like we said before. These normal computers have IP addresses, and using the IP address, we can access our target website. Now, in many scenarios, your target website or your target server will contain a large number of websites. So it'll have the website that you're looking for, that you're targeting, but it'll also contain other websites on the same server, so on the same file system. What this means is, if you, for example, could not find any vulnerabilities in your target website, you can try to hack into any other website that is installed on the same server. If you could do that, then you'll be able to gain access to the server. Gaining access to the server basically means you have access to all the other websites, because the server is just a computer and you can literally just navigate to the website that you want to hack and gain access to that website. So if you're trying to hack into a website and you couldn't find any exploits, then the next step will be trying to hack any other website that exists on the same server. So what I mean by exist on the same server is they have the same IP address. So let me show you here an example. I'm going to be showing an example of Zaid.com, so my blog, because there is a lot of websites on the same server. And if we look here on robtex.com, and I came down here to names pointing to the same IP address, you can see all of these websites exist on the same server as Zaid.com. So if you could manage to hack into any of these websites, you'll be able to navigate out of that website and then into Zaid.com and then gain full access to my website. So let me just show you here. If I copy any of these domain names, for example, we have this one, reba.me, and I'm just going to go onto my terminal. Now, if I do a ping, Zaid.com, you'll see that this is my IP address of my website. And if I do a ping on one of the websites that exist, and it's for now we're using reba.me. So if I go ping reba.me, you'll see that both websites have the same IP address. This means that both websites are installed on the same computer, and if we could hack into one of them, we can literally just navigate from that website into the other, from our Meterpreter shell or from our PHP shell or any type of shell that we're using. Another way of finding websites on the same domain is using Bing, and it's a really simple way. So if you just go on Bing, and I'm just gonna put IP, and then I'll put the IP of my target website. Again, you'll see all the other websites that exist on the same server as your target website, so you can literally hack into any of these websites and from there hack into my website and gain access to it. This is very important because in many cases your target could be very well secured, but the server itself is not secure, so you can manage to hack one of the other websites and then navigate through the server to your target.
So far, we've been gathering very useful information about the target, and we've seen that the target is always in the form of target.com, such as google.com. This name right here, such as google.com, is known as a domain. So this is the domain name. This is what we put in the address bar to access the target website. A lot of websites also have subdomains. Subdomains are the names that you see before the domain name, like this. So in this example, we have subdomain.target.com, and a real-life example would be mail.google.com. So in this case, the subdomain is subdomain, and obviously in the Google example, the subdomain is mail, and then the domain name is google.com. So we know if we go to google.com, we're going to get the famous search engine that allows us to search for things on the internet. But if we go to mail.google.com, we're going to get a completely different web application that can be used to send and receive emails. Therefore, it's as if we're getting completely different websites, but we're still targeting the same domain name, which is google.com. Therefore, if your target is google.com or target.com, it is very important to discover all of the subdomains on it, because these subdomains can give us a lot of other information. We can discover sensitive data, we can discover management pages, like the pages that the admin or members of the website use to access certain functionality. We can access completely different web applications. We can even access beta version of the web application or parts of the web application that is still under development. These parts that are under development or the beta versions are really good for hackers because there is a high chance of finding bugs, because these parts of the web application haven't been tested really well or have experimental features, and therefore there is a high chance of them containing bugs. Therefore, there's a higher chance of finding weaknesses and exploiting them to gain access to the subdomain, and then hopefully from there get access to the server or somehow escalate our privileges to fully control the target website or the target web server. Now, discovering subdomains is really easy, and there is a lot of tools out there that can be used to do that. The tool that I'm going to use is called NocPy. It's already pre-installed in the custom Kali. If you're not using the custom Kali, you'll have to manually install it. I will include its link in the resources. And as usual, before we use the tool, if we just type its name, which is NocPy, followed by --help, we're going to get a very nice help menu to show us how to use the tool and all of the other options. Obviously, the first option that we need to specify is going to be the domain after the -d or the -- domain. This is the domain that we want to discover subdomains on. You have a few other useful options that are not mandatory, and the main two options that you might consider using are the --recon and the --brute force. So the --recon tells NocPy to discover subdomains passively using the publicly available DNS records and databases. As a result, it won't be making any direct requests to the target domain, and it will be fast. However, there is a small chance that it might not get you all of the potential subdomains. The other option that you have right here is the brute force option, and as the name suggests, it's going to use a word list, so you're going to have to specify a file that contains a large number of potential names that could be subdomains.
And then the program is going to go through these names one by one and make a request to the target domain. If it gets a positive response, it means that this subdomain exists. Otherwise, it's going to move on to the next one. Therefore, this technique might take much longer because that depends on the size of the word list or the list of subdomains that you want to try. And it's going to be making direct requests to the target domain. So it's not passive compared to the first method, which is the recon. Now, the recon is actually really good and usually gets you all of the subdomains. That's why this is the method that we're going to use. So first of all, I'm going to clear my screen and I'm going to type the name of the program, NocPy, and then I'm going to do -- domain to specify the target domain that I want to discover subdomains on. And we're just going to go with google.com. And finally, we're going to do -- recon to say that we want NocPy to use the passive method to discover all of the subdomains on the specified domain, which is google.com. So the command is very simple. We're first of all specifying the name of the tool that we want to use. We're giving it the domain that we want to discover subdomains on using the -- domain, followed by the domain. And then we're specifying the technique that we want this tool to use in order to discover subdomains for us. We're going to hit enter. And we're going to give it some time to go ahead, search all of the publicly available databases and DNS records, and give us all of the subdomains that it can discover on google.com. And perfect, after less than a minute, as you can see, I got 555 subdomains to be precise for the website that I specified, which is google.com. And we can scroll up in here as you can see, and for each one of them you can even get more information about the responses that they returned. But nevertheless, all of these are real subdomains that exist on the domain that I specified, which is google.com. Now obviously we got a really big list in this example because Google is such a huge provider of so many services, but if you go through them, you're still gonna find the popular domains that you're familiar with, like plus.google and play.google, and if we scroll up, you're gonna find G Suite, Mail, Maps, and the list goes on. So now, if you are actually targeting google.com, you have increased the attack surface by so much because you can actually go to each one of these subdomains and see if it's running any applications. If it does, then you should go ahead and discover bugs and vulnerabilities similar to what we're going to show you in the next lectures in all of these applications. And in some cases, you might even be able to discover sensitive information that is not supposed to be shared to the public. You might even discover beta versions of applications. So these are applications that are still under testing. And because these applications are still being tested, they are more likely to be vulnerable. And last but not least, in many cases, you'll also discover admin pages or members pages or employee pages that you'll be able to log in to private infrastructures or applications once you manage to get usernames and passwords or exploit the system further later on as we go through the course.
So far, we learned how to find any subdomains that exist within our target website and that have not been listed. In today's lecture, we're going to see how we can find files and directories that are stored on our target computer or our target website. Again, these could be useful because these files could contain passwords, they could contain config information, or they could contain information about the actual server, which will help us further exploit our target. Let me just first show you what I mean by files and directories, just to show you the structure of directories on a web server. So here I have my Metasploitable machine, and as we know, usually the web server stuff is stored in var www, and if I do an ls, you'll see, or I'll do an lsla just so that it's nicer. You'll see that we have a number of files and directories, and we can see that we have a directory there called Metilidae. Metilidae is a web application that is designed to be hacked. Just like Metasploitable, it is designed so that it has a number of exploits so that we can learn how to hack based on it. So we can see that that's installed in a directory called Metilidae. Now, if I go here to my IP address, now this is the IP address of the Metasploitable machine. So if I do an ifconfig here, you'll see that it's
10, 20, 14, 204. So I'm in there. And you can see that they have an easy access for me for Matildae. If I click it, look at the URL here. So it's / Matildae. That means I'm inside the Matildae directory. So every time you see a /, that usually means you're inside a directory. So let's go back here, do an ls. And if I do cd Matildae, I'm going to do an ls, and you'll see that I have a large number of files here. So let's say, for example, I wanted to open one of these files, and we have index.php. If I do index.php, then this is our current file. It's called index.php. So what we learn from this is Matildae is just a directory inside my web root. So at the moment in the Metasploitable device, I'm in, let me just write it here for you. So I'm in var www Matildae. And then the file that I'm accessing is index.php. Okay, so I hope this is clear now. So I'm in this directory, and I'm accessing a file called index.php. So if I just do a pwd here, you'll see that I'm in var www Matildae. The IP address kind of hides where your www root is, so it hides the var www, and then everything after that will be displayed here after the IP address. So what we're looking to find today is all the directories and the files that we cannot see. So throughout these links, we will be able to access different types and different pages. This is the same with any other website, but there is always files and directories hidden that you just never see. So we'll see how we can get URLs for these files and access them and read the information in it. To do that, we're going to use a tool called dirb. And to see how to use that tool, we're going to do man dirb to see all the options associated with that tool. So you can see that to use the tool, you just type in dirb, the URL of your target, and then you put a word list. So the way this works is it works based on a brute force attack, and it just uses a word list of names, and it sends requests with these names, and anytime it actually finds something, it tells us that, oh, I found a file with this name. So it will only be able to find names and directories based on the word list that you provide. Now you can create a word list using Crunch, or you can use word lists that come in within dirb. The options here allow you to configure how the tool is going to work. So you can change things around the way you want it. For example, you can disable the recursiveness of the tool, so it just runs on one directory instead of trying a number of directories. You can get it to ask you if you want it to access a directory or not, instead of it automatically accessing directories and trying to find files within these directories, because this could be exhaustive if your target is a big website. There might be a lot of directories, and then the tool will be trying to access all of them and find files within all of them. So you can see how big the tree could go. You can also set it to use a username and a password if the target website uses some sort of authentication. You can use V for verbose output. And you can also use O to output the results to a file. So let me show you a very simple example of it. I'm just going to run dirb on our target, which is 10, 20, 14, 204. And that should be HTTP. Because remember, we're targeting a website, not an IP address. Then I'm going to put the directory that I want to find files and directories within. I don't want it to be accessing anything within other, because we can see here there's a number of scripts installed on this web server. So we have this script, and we also have phpMyAdmin, and we have TikiWiki. So we don't want it to be accessing all of them. We only want it to be working on Matildae on this example. So that's why I'm only using this URL, and then it's going to start finding URLs and files within this particular web application.
So I'm going to hit enter, and we're going to let it work. So this is going to use a word list file, and it's using a default small word list file that is stored in here. So it's in user shared derb word lists common.txt. You can have a look on this directory and see if there is any other word lists that you'd like to use, and you can use them only by placing the full path to the word list after the command. So instead of the way I wrote the command, you'd write it like this, and then you'd state where your word list is. For example, let's say if it's in root, you state it as root word list dot txt or whatever. But at the moment, it's using the default one, which is stored in this directory in user shared derb word lists, and it's using the one that's called common.txt. So we can see here from the result, it was able to find a number of files. Some of them we already know of. Now the fav icon is just an icon, footer and header, these are probably only style files. Index is the index that we see usually, so it's alright. Login, we can see that we discovered a page that allows people to log in. Now, in many scenarios, I was able to find username and password of a target exploiting a really complex exploit, and then ending up not being able to log in because I couldn't find where to log in. So tools like this could be very useful. And here we can see that we have a login page that we can use to log in. Page not found, not very useful. You can see the PHP info file. Now this file is usually very, very useful because it displays a lot of information about the PHP interpreter running on the web server. And as you can see, this file contains a lot of information. A lot of them are useful. Now you can see, you get to know some of the directories. You know that it's running PHP 5. The configuration is stored in this file. ini files is usually the config files for PHP, so you can see all the places where they're stored. Going down, you'll see all the permissions, the installed. We can see here it has MySQL, so it's using MySQL, and you can see the directories where different types of configurations are stored. You can also see all the modules and extensions that are being used with PHP. So this file is usually very, very useful. You can see we managed to find where the phpMyAdmin login is, and that's basically the login that's used to log into the database. Another very useful file is the robots.txt, and that is the file that tells search engines such as Google how to deal with the website. So it usually contains files that we don't want the website or Google to see or to read. So if we can read that file, then we'll be able to see what the web admin is trying to hide. So going in here, we can see that the web admin doesn't want Google to see a directory called passwords. Okay, and it also doesn't want it to see a file called config.inc. And it also doesn't want it to see these other files. So let's have a look on the passwords and the config.inc as examples. So I'm just going to open a new tab, and we're going to put our address like so. So it's the current directory, and then we just put passwords after. In that, we can see that there's a file called accounts.txt. And going here, we can see that we got some usernames and passwords. So we can see there is admin pass. We can see that we have a password as Adrian and some password. So we managed to find usernames and passwords. Now we're still not sure what these usernames and passwords for, but we're sure that we were able to find very useful stuff. Another useful file is the config.inc. So let's see what's in that. And from here we can see that we have information that allow us to connect to the database, because these are saying DB host, DB user, DB pass, and name. So we can see that the username is root and the password is blank. So we can go ahead and try to connect to the database based on these commands, and then we should be able to get access to that database. Also, using these passwords, we're still not sure what we can use them for, but we can add them to a list.
try to log into the admin, or just store them in a list so that we can use it if we're going to do any brute force attack. So then again, this is another video that just shows how important and powerful information gathering can be.